Good morning. It is awesome to see everybody here exercising the freedom to change an industry. We've all gathered here to collaborate and really leverage the power that open source gives us. And what you're going to hear about over the next couple of days is just how much this industry is changing, how much it's changing based on what this community is saying, right? And you're going to see very tangible examples of how even very established industry leaders are changing their mindset and really embracing not open standards, because I think a lot of vendors have embraced open standards, but embracing open source and the freedom that open source gives us. So I'm really happy for everybody to be here and look forward to seeing you all over the next couple of days. Before we jump into all the changes that are occurring in the industry, I just want to take a quick step back and have a little nostalgia moment about how this all got started. So back in 2009, when I joined Facebook, Facebook made a bold decision to take a different course, right? There were rumors that others, maybe like Google, had developed their own infrastructure, but they had never shared anything. So we were all left in the dark about how did they do that? What were the efficiency gains? And so actually the picture on the left is the initial few people that started this effort within Facebook. This is actually a picture from our first trip to Taiwan. And on the right is actually a picture of Freedom, which, by the way, was the code name of this first hardware project within Facebook. This started a great journey for Facebook and subsequently started a great journey for open compute. Actually, the person that you see there to the left of the picture is Amir Michael, and you'll be hearing a little about Amir later today with his new business, but he was the initial lead engineer on the Freedom design. On the far right, you see Pierre Luigi. He's a power engineer, still is at Facebook doing great design work. But I think what this shows is that with a small team of people and with a bold decision to do something different, you can actually achieve it, okay? Once that all got built and got put into production and we measured the results, we thought, wow, like what would happen if we applied the principles of open source and we shared the great efficiencies that had been gained? What if we brought that to everybody? What would that look like? How would we do it? And so that's when the Open Compute Foundation was born, to be able to take the good, efficient work, whether it's capital efficiency, environmental efficiency, or just being able to enable a new service by designing something new that wasn't being already designed by the industry. The foundation is really responsible for providing information, right? And so information comes in the form of reference architectures, these meetups that we have, providing tools and processes for our project leads to run their projects efficiently and effectively. Technology, right? So as people contribute technology, there's these components of technology that come together through Open Compute. They get posted on the website. Everybody can then go hack on those technology designs. And then lastly, solutions. So our Solution Provider program has a number of experts in how to pull together these open source components into solutions so that they're easily consumable by the end user. The hard part is we have to do this for a very diverse set of people. So there are people with all kinds of skills and experience, some people that are very used to buying fully packaged solutions and supportable solutions from vendors that they know and love, all the way up to, you know, the top 3 to 5 customers that consume the most IT equipment in the world. You know, they're very well accustomed to working directly with ODMs. And then on the other side of the chart, you're very much more accustomed to buying complete solutions and getting well-developed support programs. So the real challenge and the magic to being able to run this community effectively is how do you make this available to everyone, right? Through multiple channels, right? So it's also not okay anymore to just develop a technology and say it's only available through me, right? It's got to be available through multiple channels. So I not only have choice in technology, but I have choice, right? It's like open source typically is associated with the technology term. When we say open source in the context of hardware, it's also about sourcing. Do I have multiple sources for the same technology so that I don't have to change the way my physical infrastructure looks, even if I'm not happy with this vendor? I can change vendors. So this is a very interesting and complex dynamic that we have going on in the community. So speaking of complexities, on the left, what you see is what I would call standard high-volume product. The good thing about standard high-volume product is that it's typically an inventory. So when you go to purchase it, the lead times are short, the end user docs are done, all the QA testing is done, you know what all the BIOS postcodes mean, everything is there, it's well documented. On the right, you have customized product. And a lot of people, especially as volume increases, the more volume of IT equipment you purchase, the more you feel like, you know, I should be able to customize this product. Well, with that customization comes a lot of complexities, because on the left side of the chart, what a lot of vendors have historically done is spent a lot of time doing a lot of QA, a lot of end user documentation to make sure that when the end user consumes it, every possible thing has already been thought through. Now, the challenge with the way the industry used to work is that no matter how much volume you had, you were proposed a solution that they didn't know what your problem was before they built the solution. So it was a solution that was pre-built, well-tested, well-documented, but it wasn't built with your specific problem in mind. Now, over the last couple of years, we've kind of swung this pendulum back to the other side and said, I know, I want to customize this. Well, the real reality of this situation is that if you don't have a significant amount of volume to be able to amortize the NRE, the non-recurring engineering expense of that effort, then the price per unit may not be as attractive as you might want. The end user docs may not be in a finalized format the way you want to see it. So there's a lot of complexities that if you want to go and customize the product, you probably need to have a significant amount of volume, a significant amount of internal expertise. And so it's led to this discussion about, well, who is Open Compute really good for? Is it only good for the big customers, or is it good for everybody? And I have to say, you know, based on some of the feedback I've gotten, there have been a number of customers who have made the bold choice to go and start adopting and implementing Open Compute. But not everybody is willing to make that bold choice. What I'm excited to announce today is that it doesn't have to be such a bold choice anymore. The next speaker up is from Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard is going, and I don't want to steal too much of Antonio's thunder, but they're officially joining Open Compute. They're officially bringing forward a product line that will be branded under the Open Compute brand. It will be 100% compliant with existing Open Compute standards. And they're also going to bring the full weight of their supply chain expertise, their QA processes, and their documentation to that effort. So it's not an either-or choice anymore. There's a span now of solutions that are available that are inspired by Open Compute design principles that are available from a very broad array of suppliers. So I mentioned, you know, hardware is definitely not equal to software. I think we started the project with this kind of naive thought that if we just apply the open source principles of software to hardware, everything will just kind of work its way out. The big thing that was not really well thought through in the early days was, well, what are the key differences, right? The distribution side of this equation is really straightforward with software. You can go and download it and hack on it, right? Even the procurement process is relatively straightforward, because in the hardware procurement process, you actually have to get an approval, you have to write a PO for capital equipment. So there's friction in the distribution side of this equation, and that's the friction that we're looking to get rid of here over the coming months. On the hardware side, there's a lot of physical and tangible things that need to happen. You know, I mentioned the procurement process, but there's also logistics, there's manufacturing, there's unloading. I think this is actually a picture of within one of Facebook's data centers in Luleå, Sweden, where people have to physically touch and deploy this gear, this hardware. So there's a lot to think through that's different between hardware and software. We brought some new people on board who have experience in these areas this year. Those of you who saw the blog post, Corey Bell joined the foundation as the CEO. I'm really excited to have Corey on board. Corey has a long history in the hardware industry. Excuse me. Actually, when I worked back in the day at Dell, Corey started a business called Trifusion, which is a great integration business. So he has end-to-end experience on how products, physical, tangible products, get from a concept to a delivered product that's easily consumable by the end user. Steve Helvey has also joined the foundation as VP of Channel Development. Those of you in the Solution Provider Network probably know Steve very well. Steve has background and experience in both EMEA as well as Asia with Microsoft, Rackspace, and OpenStack. So we're excited to have both Corey and Steve with the foundation. If we could please give them a quick round of applause. So I don't want to make it sound like anything is broken with Open Compute, but instead, we're evolving Open Compute. We're really starting to sort out what are these key differences between open source software and open source hardware, and how do you make this applicable to everyone? How do you remove that friction from the consumption process of the technology? Because obviously, in order to have a healthy and thriving community, people also need to be consuming this product as easily as they've consumed product in the past. We'll talk about the proverbial bar here and raising the bar. All of you are here today to meet this minimum bar of collaboration, right? The engineering workshops kicked off yesterday. We're going to have more meetings about that today. Collaborate is one of the most beautiful things about this. Everybody's here to voice their opinions, to educate suppliers on what their particular needs are, and to get products built better for what they need. The next step in this and raising the bar is to contribute, right? So some people get so inspired by this program that they say, you know what, I've developed some technology inside, whether I'm a supplier or a consumer, and I'm going to contribute that technology back to the community and see what comes of it. And then we thought, well, so once we get collaboration and contribution happening, then people will just consume the technology. But what we didn't really have, as I mentioned earlier, was the supply chain prowess within the foundation. Because remember, the foundation doesn't sell anything, right? We're here to disseminate information, to support the projects, and to really bring this community together. Now, we have solution providers who are doing a great job of trying to pull all this together. But one of the things that we can do within the foundation, and some of you who have recently started to contribute have noticed, we're asking some different questions now when things get proposed as a contribution. Because it used to be solely focused on the merits of the technology of the contribution, which is still the most important part of this program. But we're also starting to ask questions now like, well, who's the lead customer who wants to consume that technology? Who's the lead supplier who's willing to build that technology? Is it available through multiple channels so that it's openly sourced through multiple channels? So we're asking some of the more business-related questions as these contributions are coming in, so that way we don't have technology for technology's sake, right? We have technology that somebody is signed up to build, somebody is signed up to buy, and multiple people are signed up to distribute. Things are going really well with regards to membership, and I apologize for the slide. It was a little too many members to get all on one chart. I thought that was pretty cool for the graphics guy. Congratulations, Moose. By the way, thank you very much to Moose and to the Facebook team for continuing to support me personally. Even though I'm not a Facebook employee anymore, they did the great work on these slides, so thanks, Moose and Megan and team. We also have some notable new members that I want to talk about. You all may have seen recently in the Wall Street Journal, Bank of America, talking about some of how they've been inspired by Open Compute and how they're changing their path forward. You'll hear from Capital One later today in a panel discussion about financial services companies and their journey with Open Compute. Cisco and Juniper are new members. You know, obviously there's a lot changing in the networking industry. We look forward to Cisco and Juniper's contributions in the future. NetBrick and Tsinghua University, new members from China. NetBrick is not only a new member, but also already making contributions. And Tsinghua, we're going to talk about our third Open Compute Certification Center that's just recently been opened at Tsinghua University. There's also one new member that is noteworthy, and I apologize I don't have their logo on the chart, and that is Apple. Apple has been involved in this project quietly for quite a long time, and it's great. I mean, I think most of us see Apple as a great products company for consumer electronics, but what a lot of people don't realize is they have excellent infrastructure engineering people, because if you look at the breadth of what Apple builds and supports online, it's pretty substantial. So welcome, Apple, and all of our new members. We're really glad you're here. For a small group of people that work within the Open Compute Foundation, which, by the way, it's 5 people, we've hosted a lot of events. Obviously, the summit is the biggest one. We do this once a year. By the way, we'll be back in this same venue next year around this same time. We'll publish the date soon. But we did our first European summit, had a great turnout in Europe, starting the community effort in Europe. A lot of activity in Asia. What you see on the chart with the green, or the lighter green, I guess, the OCP green, the Kermit the Frog green, actually, is where the 2 summits have been. Then the teal color, those are where our 3 Open Compute certification centers are. And then all of the others are engineering workshops that have been hosted around the world, or OCP days, just for people to come out and learn more about Open Compute and what's going on. Out of all that, as I mentioned earlier, you start out by collaborating, and then comes contribution. NetBrick is a new company that started out, and when I heard about this contribution, I was like, why? Why would they possibly open source an entire hardware? This is basically a box full of NAND. It's compliant with the OpenRack spec. Why would they not only open source the hardware design, the CAD files, but also the BIOS and firmware stack? And it was explained to me that they're starting a new business based on the fact that they want to distribute software on top of open source hardware. And so this is exactly what we had envisioned would happen, is that people think differently about the way they start businesses and say, look, through open source, if I can get a big footprint of this particular device out there, and I know that the device is transparent, right? So everybody wants to build a software-defined something, right? If it's a software-defined storage, software-defined data center, software-defined network, put the X at the end, it's a software-defined something. If you're building that software definition on top of something that's non-transparent underneath, it's really hard to make it work. And so NetBrick has made this completely transparent, so they can now build software-defined storage on top of this device. So thank you for being a new member and making your first contribution already. Acton is another one. They just had 4 of their switches pass OCP certification. They've contributed the entire design. This is actually, you'll hear from Jay Parikh later about the Wedge product. This is one of the companies that Facebook is working with on Wedge. And they've just done a fantastic job of putting out multiple 10 and 40 gig switches that are fully open sourced. Broadcom, this is another very interesting contribution in the networking area. For years, everybody has wanted to figure out, how do I program the underlying ASICs in a switch, right? And Broadcom ASICs are in most of the switches. And it's only been a handful of OEMs and a very small number of customers who have actually been able to license this technology from Broadcom to be able to program the underlying switch ASICs. It's really exciting that Broadcom today is announcing the ability for everyone in the community to now be able to program these ASICs. So opening up that layer of the switch and making it even more transparent than it's ever been before is excellent work by Broadcom. And I know there's a lot of work within the community, and thank Broadcom for doing this. So those are all suppliers. We also have customers that are contributing technology. Goldman Sachs, and you'll hear from Don Duet later today about Goldman's journey with Open Compute. But they have a lot of stateless environments where it was relatively easy to adopt Open Compute, but they also have some stateful environments, right? And by stateful, I mean, if something goes wrong with the server, they need to know about it. Well, some of the initial contributions within Open Compute stripped away a lot of the basic server functionality features, some health monitoring and things like this. Well, so Goldman solved the problem, and they decided to go build a hardware monitoring agent that now they can apply to Open Compute hardware and get back just the management features that they need, so that when they use Open Compute in a stateful implementation, they have the right health monitoring information. They've hardened this technology for over 7 years, and they are now contributing it to Open Compute. So thank you to Goldman for making this contribution. It just allows us to deploy Open Compute in a lot of workloads that even a few years ago we didn't think were going to be applicable for Open Compute. Stack Velocity is a new business within Jabil that is coming to the table, not only as a new notable member, but also with a new contribution. So this is actually a side view of a storage sled that plugs into the OpenRack chassis. And so as you know, you can put 3 sleds across an OpenRack. They blind mate with the bus bars in the back, and Stack Velocity has designed this with hot plug drives from the side, and it basically turns this into a small storage server. And so very cool work that Stack Velocity has done here, and they're bringing their global manufacturing capabilities and efforts to this equation in addition to what I've already announced with HP. Mellanox, another great contribution, and you're going to hear more about Mellanox's contribution in some of the later presentations, so I don't want to steal too much of their thunder, but basically this multi-host technology that's now packaged in an OCP mezzanine card format. So this is going to allow designers to put, for example, multiple single socket servers on a single PCB and have better connectivity out of that device. So fewer connectivity cables and so forth. Last but not least, and this one's pretty cool, Rackspace, IBM, and some other partners of OpenPower have been working together to bring forward the first power architecture-based system. This is a system design that is compatible with OpenRack. You'll hear from Aaron Sullivan of Rackspace later on about what they're doing with power and with OpenPower and what advantages this allows for them, right? So I talked about enabling new services, so gaining capital efficiency, environmental efficiency, those are very exciting. But when you can design a product that enables you to launch a new service that you would not have otherwise been able to launch, that's pretty cool. And so with OpenPower, this is more of an open architecture than we've ever seen before. From microarchitecture to BIOS to firmware, it is open. So this is a completely transparent machine that has gobs and gobs, that's a technical term, of memory, that's going to allow companies like Rackspace to host far more virtual machines per host than they've ever been able to do before. So I don't have time to go through all of the contributions. I mean, the snowball of contributions to this project has been increasing dramatically from year over year over year. You're going to hear a lot more from Facebook, a lot more from Microsoft. Both Facebook and Microsoft have been key contributors. I mean, you know, when we announced Microsoft as a new member last year, I think a lot of people in the community were skeptical about, why is Microsoft here? Is it like a marketing effort? Are they going to actually contribute? And I can tell you that the Microsoft team has contributed not only so much time, but also so much intellectual property to this project that it's fantastic. So I just want to quickly give Microsoft a round of applause for making such a huge impact in their first year. New businesses are being created around Open Compute as well, and this is really fun to see. Coolan, so I talked about Amir Michael earlier. This is a really, no pun intended, cool idea where you essentially have a community-based SaaS solution that allows people to put their environmental information from their data center. How are my hard drives performing? How is this performing? How is that performing? And then through data analytics, be able to allow others to utilize this tool to say, if I deploy this way, how should I be thinking about how my environment's going to perform over time? So very cool to see Amir and team launch a new business, and wish them all the best. Thank you. I mentioned Stack Velocity a little bit earlier, new business unit within Jabil, bringing all of the Jabil manufacturing prowess from around the world and creating an end-user facing organization to bring open compute to everybody by leveraging Jabil's capabilities on a global scale. NetBrick, I mentioned earlier, new member, new business, new way of thinking about bringing on a quote-unquote hardware business, and then open sourcing the entire design and then layering software on top. I think that's pretty cool. And then the V in the bottom is actually Vapor. And I neglected when I introduced Corey to also thank Cole Crawford. So Cole Crawford was the executive director of this foundation. Corey has replaced Cole, and Cole has decided to start a new business called Vapor. And this is really a data center orchestration solution that includes both some physical sensors at the data center floor as well as an orchestration engine that helps people optimize what's going on in the data center with regards to power and thermals. So very exciting to see Cole and wish him the best of luck in his new adventures as well. I mentioned earlier the solution provider ecosystem. Since the foundation doesn't sell anything, we really rely on our solution providers to do a great job and representing the Open Compute brand to the end user, to the end consumer. You guys are all familiar with Penguin, AMAX, Hive, CTC, Quanta. There are also, and I have to point this out, there are also some suppliers in the community that are representing themselves as partners of Open Compute, leveraging the Open Compute logo, but they're not certified solution providers. So when you go to consume Open Compute, please make sure you're consuming from a certified Open Compute solution provider. These solution providers do, in fact, pay the foundation money to be part of this program. They do leverage the brand. We do an audit to make sure that they do have capabilities that represent the brand correctly, and they're being very successful. And the other thing that's pretty cool to mention here is that both Hewlett-Packard and Stack Velocity have joined as Open Compute Solution Providers. So welcome to Hewlett-Packard and Stack Velocity. All right. I really actually hate when people say, you know, you should just think outside of the box, right? Because, I mean, if you think about the way the industry has traditionally worked in the past, we've been given a box, right? And this box is either going to work for me or it's not going to work for me. And you're pretty much left with a choice of coloring inside of the lines of the box. Instead of thinking outside of the box, I prefer to think about it as, let's just ignore that the box exists and just color outside of the lines, right? And by doing so, we're really exercising our freedom to say, look, I don't even want to acknowledge the fact that there is a box or there is an industry norm that needs to be adhered to. Let's just blow that the hell up and start over. And what I've seen over the last 4 years with this community and with the voice and the energy that's behind this community is people are listening. They're saying, look, the box doesn't matter anymore, right? Let's draw outside the box. Let's reinvent this thing for the better. Let's not just reinvent it for reinvention's sake, but let's make sure that we're making tangible forward progress in making everyone, not just the top 5 consumers in the world, but let's make sure we make everyone's data centers more efficient and more effective through the power of open source. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to introduce Antonio Neri next from Hewlett-Packard. Thank you.